Hey guys, what's up? It is week 403. I think it's 403. Maybe we're at 404. I don't know anymore. I'm pretty sure it's 403. Let's hop into the first review. Let's just get right into this. The first one up is Tokijiro, Lone Yakuza from Radiance Films, 1966 film here by director Katō. This is the first Katō movie I've seen. He's done a handful of films. He has a pretty solid reputation amongst film fans. This is the first one, like I said, I've watched, and I'm not disappointed. It's pretty good. So in the very beginning, we have this traveling Yakuza. Although the title Lone Yakuza is not necessarily basically the beginning of the film, because he has a traveling companion who looks up to him, feels indebted to him, just kind of learning from him along the ropes, all those kind of things like that. And right in the beginning, we kind of have to establish our character, right? In these movies, you always establish your main character as somebody who is pretty badass, does well with a sword. So these three kind of Yakuza guys try to attack him for revenge killing. And we get that this guy is all about honor. He doesn't want to do it, but they attack him, and he kind of handles all three of them fairly well. His friend is a little, obviously this is not his strong point. And as this traveling Yakuza moves forward, he is always telling his friend, all these people, they look at us as scum. We don't have a home. We're just traveling, the lords and stuff, and these other people, they want to use us. These people own properties, all these things like that. But he is an honorable man. And they stop in this kind of, brothel kind of place like that, although it's not for him to frequent the companionship of a woman. That's not really something he does, just to lay his head to rest. And so these villainous kind of people come in and try to muscle their way out and muscle the people who own this brothel out. And the smart idea from the owner, she says, well, we'll send these people away, this guy, this traveling Yakuza, who obviously is a very tough man. We'll give him a parting gift and tell him we can no longer house him. Maybe he'll feel guilty enough, and out of honor, he'll kind of fight for us. So they're using him as a pawn. And this guy sees right through this the whole time. He decides to not do it. His friend, feeling like he owes them the debt, although he does not have the skill, goes to do it, and this kind of causes a chain reaction here. We see this amazing fight scene where a Yakuza basically single-handedly takes out a whole house of these other Yakuza. The thing about him is he is just, it's one of those movies where I was going to say a thing about like samurai films or Yakuza films where the sword is used. You could say like the action doesn't seem necessarily realistic when you have one guy killing a dozen men at a time, but the one slice, the one sword cut pretty much does it. And it gets violent, it gets bloody for 66. It's a fairly bloody movie. All the fight choreographing's really done well. The cinematography's done well. It looks fantastic. It's a beautiful looking movie. A lot of outside landscapes and things like that done well, but there's a real heart to this film. And as it progresses, we kind of learn that this Yakuza has like a soft side. He's not really a vengeful, angry person. He doesn't want to do this. He's your roaming guy who wants out of this life, and he ends up meeting a young boy and his mother, and they have a small little bond, and he has to do something unspeakable to pay back a lord. And this is kind of his life, is constantly doing these horrible acts and everything like that. I don't want to spoil everything. It's incredibly tragic, really tragic ending, great fight scenes. The last fight scene is excellent, where you have this this kind of old school gang battle with swords and everything, and all these established characters getting hacked to pieces. And the ending leaves you on a good note. It leaves on an intelligent note, kind of, that violence is not really the answer, as you would expect in these kind of great films. But as far as the special features are concerned, we have interview with film critic Koshi Yuno, a young master visual essay on Star Nakamura by Japanese cinema expert Robin Gatto. And they talk about his career and up until, what he was doing, historical dramas and all that kind of stuff like that. Very interesting, his childhood, his father, all that kind of stuff like that. And we also have a nice booklet in here from Radiance Films, always delivers on that. Great little movie, very entertaining, very well made, and I think most people will enjoy this, especially if you like these kind of Yakuza top period piece ones. I think this takes place during the 1700s. Japanese, historical time periods are really hard for me to kind of grasp. It's hard enough to know American history, let alone Japanese history, based on, their outfits and the styles and the demeanors and the swords and stuff like that. It's a little bit difficult to grasp that, but I think it's the 17th century from my understanding. But I would recommend Tokijiro Lone Yakuza. Okay, the next one here is A Golden Harvest, and this is from 1973 from Eureka Films. This is A Man Called Tiger, starring Jimmy Wang Yu from stuff like Chinese Boxer, a bunch of films. Originally got a start at Shaw Brothers, had a falling out, still became a big star. And this is kind of one of these, I wouldn't say fish out of water kind of movies. Like it's kind of, it's a Hong Kong movie, obviously, but Jimmy Wang Yu is in Tokyo, and he's an outsider and all that kind of stuff. And his father was a well-respected man who died by suicide in a gambling den, and it never really sat right with him. So he starts to ask around, and it leads him to kind of this Yakuza boss, this crime boss, where he ends up joining, and he starts to dig deeper and try to figure out who is responsible for his father's death. It points to kind of the other criminal element in the city, but there's a lot more than meets the eye, of course. Some assassins are hired to kill him. What's funny is Jimmy Wang Yu is like a James Bond type character in this movie. There's several women leads in the film, 3 or 4, and 3 of them are definitely interested in him. First one's kind of like the prostitute that's given to him, to watch him and kind of pleasure him and that aspect. And then there's also a lady who is, like a sweet a singer, a performer, and everything like that. Also a foreigner that he sticks up for. But what's really weird is a huge chunk of this movie is fighting, is kind of mystery stuff. There's a great fight scene in this kind of abandoned like work site where there's one of the head honcho bad guys that he took his spot comes in. He's like, and there's this great elaborate fight scene where he fights a bunch of guys and everything. Those are pretty well done. Now, I don't think Jimmy Wang Yu was actually like a traditional martial artist. I think he was just kind of a tough guy that knew kind of how to fight and whatever, and kind of had some crazy antics from my understanding. He's solid in here. The dubbing is a little silly. You can watch it in the traditional classic language or the dubbing. I sometimes switch back and forth to check them both out. But so the one thing that this movie has a huge chunk of is gambling. There's a giant gambling scene where we have all these characters that are put down by the big heavy crime bosses, and they have their gambler and all that kind of stuff. And there's this weird aspect that's kind of put into the third of the film where we have these like fathers, these forgotten fathers, that lost fathers of these women, and they're also like have turned into a life of crime, but at the very last minute they kind of redeem themselves with some sort of good deed or loyalty or honorable act. And it's just like, this is weird and kind of shoehorned in. It's also really weird that all these women are just head over heels in love with Jimmy Wang Yu within the 5 minutes, but you have to really critique every movie when we're talking about that. Overall, A Man Called Tiger, entertaining movie. I don't think it's as good as something like Chinese Boxer. The director, Lo Wang. Now, this movie actually took place after some of the Bruce Lee movies. He did a couple Bruce Lee movies. He later, in the early 70s, this is like 73, so he did like Fist of Fury and stuff like that before this, and I think Big Boss. And then he would go on to do this film, and then later he'd do some Jackie Chan movies. So he worked with a lot of the big martial artists of the time. If you watch interviews with Jimmy Wang Yu, he mentions that he knew Bruce Lee, and he was kind of the precursor to Bruce Lee, according to him, and stuff like that. Maybe he got some inspiration and stuff, and kind of was a trend starter in that aspect. As far as the special features are concerned, we have a presentation of brand new from a 2K restoration, rarely seen uncut Hong Kong theatrical version of the film, which is longer. Then we have the re-release version of the film. We have original Mandarin and classic English dub for both cuts of the film. We have subtitles, of course. Brand new audio commentary by Hong Kong version by East Asian film expert Frank Jin and Michael Worth. I always think that's great because Frank Jin comes up with a lot of the information and knowledge, and Michael Worth has it as well, but Michael Worth is a martial artist, so he can point out the styles and how good the fight choreographing is and all that kind of stuff, which many other commentators could not do. And then we also have brand new audio commentary and export version by action cinema experts Mike Leader and Arnie Venema, of course. Also do a great job, a lot of knowledge there. Cutting Tiger hidden subtitles, brand new video essay by Brandon Bentley. Did you know what sadness means? Plus, Because I Have Your Love, music videos prepared exclusively for this release. There's a lot of music numbers in the movie, of course, that are done because a huge chunk of this movie takes place in a really cool nightclub. And there's a great scene with Jimmy Wang Yu. This girl approaches him and says, I want to buy a drink. He's like, I have no money. I cannot buy you a drink, and whatever, like all that kind of stuff like that. And they have this nice little interaction and whatnot. And he becomes pretty ruthless crime boss, and a point where he has to literally, he's like a tough exterior guy, but definitely has a soft side, and that's kind of shown when he tears up a Chinese restaurant as a gangster, and the guy he tears it up from, he knows him, and he just goes back and ends up paying for everything, or sending a friend to do it. There is a really crazy scene that I should mention right on the cover here. There's a fight on, I don't really know what these called, like air trolleys or whatever they're called. I don't necessarily know. There's also a crazy one in the Nighthawks with Stallone and Rutger Hauer. But there's a nutso fight scene in one of those where somebody actually gets knocked out and then people are jumping from it, and it's like, it feels so high. But it's a lot of crazy, wild stuff going on. Entertaining, kind of, I would say kung fu kind of style fighting and stuff like that. But yeah, check it out. A Man Called Tiger from Eureka Films. Okay, now we're going to do the last two in the horrible history, four historical epics by Chang from Eureka Films, of course. The third film in the set is Boxer Rebellion. This is based on a true thing that happened in China. Where a bunch of foreign people were coming into the country, and China was very upset with this because they were, exchanging and trading, and they felt like they were being taken advantage of, and the foreigners were from 8 different countries: America, Britain, Russia, Japan, and some other ones. I think Germany was in there. So they felt like they were being taken advantage of, so they wanted to kind of stand up against like the Chinese government and all these kind of big foreign powers and attack them. So that's where the Boxer Rebellion comes from. And the rebellion's originally led by this like charlatan guy who acts like he has all these powers and he really doesn't. And there's a group of 3 people, 3 brothers. One is Alexander Fushang, the other familiar faces as well, and they're impervious to like blade cuts and things like that, and they have these tricks to get away with it, or possibly even show people that they're not being cut, all that kind of thing like that. So So they have this huge ordeal that a charlatan guy bases on everybody attacking these groups that have these like automatic guns and all these things like that. And there's another guy who kind of steps in and is also an expert kind of martial artist that's like a friend of theirs that takes them under their wing. So there's this giant awesome attack in the very beginning where you think like they're all just going to march in and take out the foreigners. And it's very much like a Wild Bunch scene where we have the kind of classic Gatling gun, machine gun kind of style thing. I wouldn't call it a Gatling gun. It's more of a feeding machine gun like they have in the Wild Bunch, because it's got to be that time period when these kind of guns, maybe a little later because they were introduced in China later than they were introduced to the Western world, everything like that. There's actually been a couple Hong Kong movies about that, I believe. Is the Jackie Chan one about that? I think the Project A might have a little bit of that, not wanting the guns in the automatic guns into their world and everything like that, cannons and things like that. But so what happens is this one guy acts like they won the battle, although they had tremendous losses. And it gets really crazy where these our 3 leads kind of end up on the run, and everybody's been like killed and picked off, and there's constant slaughter and everything like that. And Richard Harrison is in here, who worked with Chang and Marco Polo, also in this set, and he's like a German officer. And there's some really good interactions between them all. This is a really solid kind of epic, crazy film with incredible violence, incredible action. Overall, a really solid movie here in Boxer Rebellion, based on a true incident I had no clue about. There's so many crazy atrocities and wars and battles and skirmishes in the world, especially world history, that aren't necessarily really taught in America, and the Boxer Rebellion is one of them. As far as the special features, we have a commentary, of course, by Mike Leader and Artie Venema. And what else do we have here? New video essay on Chang-Chi's historical films by Jonathan Clemens, author of Brief History of China, National Defense. New interview with Hong Kong cinema scholar Wayne Wong, editor of Martial Arts Studies. Plus a limited collector's booklet featuring new writings on all 4 films by writer and critic James Oliver. So, yeah, I actually really enjoyed Boxer Rebellion. So far, the set's really solid. I think that when I get to the last one, I'll do a ranking. But, yeah. Okay, the next one in the set is a more contemporary film, but again from the horrible history, 4 Riders, directed by Chang-Chi, and this has David Chang in it and Tai Lung, and I can never think of this actor's name, but he's in Killer Constable, he's in Boxer from Shangtua, excellent actor, he's also in here. And this one takes place right after the Korean War, and it's these Hong Kong soldiers, these Chinese soldiers, basically not Hong Kong, but Chinese soldiers stationed in Korea. The war is over, so they're all kind of leaving and going home and everything like that. And in the very beginning, Tai Lung steals a Jeep and causes this big fight, and everybody's having a great time, and he kind of goes cross country, and he picks up this hitchhiker, and they form a quick friendship, and he ends up kind of going into the city to relax, and he ends up trying to stop these gangsters from beating this guy, and this guy's beat to death, and then the authorities and the gangsters frame him for this murder. So Tai Lung gets put in the prison, put in kind of like custody, and he's in the hospital beaten half to death, and he's going to be charged with this murder that he didn't commit. His friend David Chang is involved with these gangsters. He's kind of an outsider, does what he wants, and all these kind of things like that. And David Chang doesn't really sit well with him, of course. And what happens is he kind of gets the help of the kind of the hitchhiker that became fast friends with him and everything like that. And these two guys decide they're going to get him out with the help of the other friend, boxer from Chang. Shang Tuang comes in here, all this kind of stuff like that. So these four people end up planning this crazy elaborate escape where a nurse is killed who one of the people's in love with, and it messes them up. So these four guys are kind of infiltrating the underworld life and everything like that. So it's one of these ones where the foreigners are in a different country, and Tai Lung's really great in it. David Chang's good in it, and I can't think of the boxer from Shang Tuang actor. He's exceptional in it too. So like we have this like kind of wild bunch. This is very Sam Peckinpah. It's very Western too, and at times when we have like the gritty violence, the action and people getting shot, it's so Sam Peckinpah. But then we'll also have these flares of them jumping on trampolines and doing flips to fight, and you're like, this feels such like a spaghetti Western. Like you'll see that kind of stuff even in Massacre Time, the Fulci stuff. Like there's like a playful element to some of the spaghetti Westerns where they're doing like rolls and flips and stuff like that, and almost acrobatics to to fight and stuff. So there's like a comic flair, not comic, I would say like comic book flair is what I'm looking for in that. So of course they get involved with these bad guys that and everything, and they're this whole elaborate group of villains that are set up and everything like that. There's a couple really cool ones, including this woman who throws darts, which adds to some of the really nasty stuff in the movie. There's a really dark moment in this that almost is probably it matches with the ending tone, I would say, but where there's a group of girls that end up helping them, and they pay for the helping these guys, and it's just like the shot that shows the aftermath. I was just like, oh wow, this is darker than I thought it would go. And the ending lives up to a Peckinpah movie, and I love that kind of stuff. That they in the credits and the commentaries they say it's a precursor to Heroic Bloodshed, and I definitely could see that. That would come out like 10 years later or something like that. The big kind of awesome epic John Woo movies where you got friends shooting each other and friends saving each other. They're always like end in tragedy, like bullet ballet shit that I love. But so as far as the special features are concerned, we do have a commentary here with Mike Leader and Artie. No, that's the other ones. Who does the commentary in this one? We have the expert Frank Jin, of course, and martial arts expert Michael Worth, which I just talked about them in the last release for A Man Called Tiger. Again, good stuff here. Frank Jin, highly knowledgeable about the subject and the releases, all these movies, and the theatrical stuff in all these movies. And Michael Worth is a martial artist himself, very familiar with the actors as well. They break it down, do all the information that you'd want to hear. But if I had to rank these, Four Riders is way up there. Love this movie. Never heard anyone really talk about it. One of my favorite Shang-Chi movies that I've seen, and I've probably seen, I know this is not enough, like, oh, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I've probably seen 15 Shang-Chi movies in the last 5-6 years, and I've enjoyed them. He's very good, but I think that Four Riders is my favorite of this set. And then I think I'm going Boxer Rebellion. I thought that was really good established characters, and the machine gun scene is excellent. And it's always the guy who leads you into battle, who gets you all hyped up and says, we're going to win, and all the power for glory, never partakes in the battle, but takes all the credit when you win and hides when you lose. That's kind of the Boxer Rebellion aspect there. And then I think the Pirate Marco Polo are around a tie. They're both good, but I think the second disc in the set kind of outshines it. But yeah, check this set out. 4 films that a lot of people haven't seen by Shang-Chi. I mean, he's been a kind of a staple in the Shaw Brothers movies, but I really enjoyed this set overall. It's good stuff, and I learned a little bit about Chinese history, Hong Kong history. If it's accurate or not, who knows? There we go. Okay, we're going to check out one from Severn Films here. This is a 4K of the Night Train murders, or what is it, the Last Stop on the Night Train or something. They has multiple names, of course. And the marketing and the name would suggest this is a heavy rip-off of The Last House on the Left, 1972. This is directed by Italian directors of Italian film. In fact, Aldo Lado, who did Short Night of the Glass Dolls and Who Saw Her Die. Who Saw Her Die I'm familiar with. Very good giallo, although the ending is not as strong as I would like it, but still great one. I have very fond memories of that one. And Night Train Murders is a movie that I should have watched 20 years ago. This is a blind spot for me, and it's one of my favorite subgenres. It's from one of my favorite periods of film. It's by a director I like. And I don't know why I never watched this. I've had this on DVD, Blu-ray, and now 4K. So I was like, I'm going to pop it in and watch it. Severn Films did a great job cleaning this thing up. And this movie kind of blew me away. expected to love it because it's from that sweet spot in cinema of those kind of, as my friend art editor would say, those confrontational cinema, that kind of thing like that. And this is definitely that. In fact, there's a commentary by art editor and Bruce Holchek on here, do a really good job. There's also a commentary by Aldo Lado himself, as well as an hour and 21-minute interview. And I think he recently passed away, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Aldo Lado did just recently pass away. But this film just blew me away. And a lot of the Italian films, as you know, like I said earlier, like last week I was talking about Italian cinema, how their Euro thrillers, political thrillers, and art films always have these social messages in them, heavy stuff, and even their poliziotteschi and stuff like that, and revenge films, and they're all these Italian directors are always putting forth some sort of social political message in their films. And now I know Night Train Murders, people are like, it's just a Last House exploitation, rape, revenge, nasty, movie. And it was advertised that to the Western audience for sure. They expected something nasty and villain and gory, and a lot of people I think probably were taken back how much they didn't like it at the end, because there's not really a good catharsis for the people. Well, if you're kind of like understanding it and interpreting it correctly, there's not really a catharsis on the movie. It's kind of just really fucking ugly and very mean-spirited about its outlook on society. So I love that kind of stuff, because I feel like, there's a lot of movies that tell you society sucks, but all the people in the movie act like aliens, and you're like, I don't buy this movie because I don't buy how the people are acting. And Night Train Murders, I just bought it. I did. So the film opens up right away with Ennio Morricone score. You're like, oh wow, he's not singing, but there's this wonderful song that he did, and there's this music sung in it, and it's just a beautiful song. It's kind of like folky kind of song that kind of explaining all it's lovely and beautiful. And I'm a sucker for 70s movies. Look at Chino, the Charles Bronson movie, The Crazies, even Midnight from 1982. I love these songs that are made for these movies, and it has Ennio Morricone involved. It's going to be class. It's a great song. It's a lovely, beautiful song, and it has these two kind of low-rent kind of degenerates going around. They see this kind of mall Santa. It's a Christmas movie, which he's an outside Salvation Army Santa, and he sits over and he sneaks a drink, and you're like, yes, it's under the surface. Everything is not as it seems, that kind of stuff. And these guys beat him up and take his money with the song playing, and I was like, yes, thank you. If there's anything that will get me to love your movie, you play beautiful music, and then you have haunting imagery. Cannibal Holocaust is the number one movie that does that for me. I think that Ruggero Deodato is excellent at doing that kind of stuff with the use of using Riz Ortolani's scores for House on the Edge of the Park and Cannibal Holocaust, and this movie also does it. Mark of the Devil does it really well. So there's that kind of aspect where you play something real beautiful but show somebody something horrible, so it just fucks with your mind completely, because when you hear that sweet music, you get the chills, the hair stand up, because it has a certain, that the chords are playing and whatever it is, and you're seeing the lyrics, but then you're seeing something awful and you're just like, oh no. It's two different emotions kind of butting in, and that movie does this in the very beginning, so it sets up the horrible acts to come. Although it is relaxing in the beginning, you don't know what's going to happen. You do know what's going to happen, so you're waiting for it. Also plays at the end to kind of send us out. So we're following these two girls from Germany. One is German, they're cousins. One is Italian. They're kind of heading back to their home in Italy, or the one girl's home in Italy, to be with their parents on Christmas. Salerno is the father figure in here. He's in Bandidos by Massimo Dallamano, and he's in Bird with the Crystal Plumage by Dario Argento. So he's a good actor, big actor, has a name. He's great in this movie. He plays a kind of a surgeon, and him and his wife are on the outs in the relationship. And they're trying to rekindle it, so we kind of are constantly cutting back between this kind of rekindling and this high class, people and stuff like that. Respectable is the term that Aldo Lado used in the little interview he had. Respectable people, right? Not like the thugs running around the street. So as we progress, we see these two girls in the train, and they're kind of just, they're close, but they're different. They're talking about one lost their virginity recently and whatnot, and they're just smoking cigarettes. It's a crowded train, and the two thugs have jumped on board. They shouldn't be there, but they're there. And we're also cutting back between this respectable woman who has this veil on, and Lado explains that she was covered up on purpose to kind of hide her true motives, her true self. And in the very beginning, she knocks over something, and like a pornographic picture falls out, where that's like, it was a bigger deal back then, but it's just like, this is who she is. This is like hidden. She is on the outside. She is this respected person in society, but underneath she's repressed. And he said she had repressed sexuality, repressed violence, these things that she never got out. It's played by, I can't think of her actress name, but she's in Deep Red. She was in a lot of art films, a big name at the time. Excellent performance. One of my favorite performances from Villainous I've ever seen, because it's nuanced, it's complicated, and it's just well fucking done. And her acting is spectacular. There's times in the film when, after the horrible events that happen, she catches herself, she's fixing herself in the mirror, and she's looking at herself, and it's almost just like somebody who's well aware of what they've done and doesn't seem to be that affected by it. It's really fucked up, and it's just a really good performance, and just something, her studying her own looks and studying herself, almost like she's like preparing herself how to act a certain way, and it's just like, oh, this is good. So what happens is, almost right away, the young punks kind of push her into the bathroom. One of them does. The young punks are kind of two different works. One's kind of quieter with a harmonica, which immediately reminded me of Sergio Leone's Charles Bronson character with harmonica. Then later used in another popular rape revenge film, I Spit on Your Grave, where we have the harmonica, probably taken from something like Deliverance with the banjo. That weird kind of instrument kind of thing. I feel like Chris Christopherson would have had a harmonica and bring me to head of Alfredo Garcia too. I think one of them is a guitar, but maybe I'm wrong. But that idea that harmonica probably carried over from Ennio Morricone doing the score, and the lead actress mentions that too. But that's the first thing I thought of too when I saw the harmonica. I thought I Spit on Your Grave, and I thought, no, it's probably Once Upon a Time in the West, because that came first. But as it progresses, these kind of two hit each other at first, and then the guy looks like he's going to rape this high class woman. But she kind of turns the tables almost immediately, and she seems to start controlling him, and she starts controlling these punks. And the girls, their train is held back, so they jump train, and they end up on a train with just them on it. Who ends up showing up? The two punks and this respectable woman. And the respectable woman kind of manipulates these two young idiots into carrying out some of the worst acts of violence in the movie. And not only is it that, there's another kind of respectable man on this train, and he starts to witness these kind of acts of perversion and rape and sexual assault. And what's he do? He doesn't tell anyone. He seemed to be kind of cruising at one point. He starts to watch, and he's forced into the action as well. And it's just some of the ugliest shit I've seen, and normally I'm not, shocked or anything, and I know people are like, oh, you're shocked by this, but I'm not shocked by, some guy just like, hey, this is 45 minutes of me beating a baby or something like that in a movie that has no real social impact or is not saying anything. Like, you can put as much extreme shit in your movie as possible, but if it's just used for the sake of extremity, it's not saying anything, it's not done well, it's not powerful, that stuff's not bothersome to me. It has to have something in it. Like, Cannibal Holocaust has something in it. It's saying something, it's doing something, it's filmmaking, it's art, it's manipulating you to a certain way to get that, to invoke that feeling. A lot of films are just gross and stupid for being gross and stupid, and sometimes I like that, sometimes I don't. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But this movie, for me, actually got to me. There is a scene where somebody is violated with a knife that I just was kind of shocked they went as far as they did and showed it, and the way it's filmed and the way the reaction is amongst the punks and amongst the respectable lady. And of course it's going to end to the fact where they're going to run into the parents, and we're going to have the classic Virgin Spring, Last House on the Left kind of style revenge, but it's not your cathartic revenge. Last House on the Left is not very cathartic either, because by the end of the film you realize they've kind of lost their humanity, what they've had to become. They become monsters. And Salerno in this movie is kind of like that too, where he's like this guy who's, I have no need for a guard dog, I have no need for a gun, but he becomes this instrument of violence, and he becomes more violent than the actual perpetrators, which is Aldo Lado's intent. And Aldo Lado said in the commentary, Bruce and Art mentioned that he was upset when people cheered it. But that's not, I think a lot of people, when you sit here and study the movies, you do understand that it's not supposed to be something, but when you watch these horrible people carry out this act, I do think people were probably very upset with this movie, because certain characters do not get their comeuppance in these kind of movies, and there's a lot of smart movies that don't necessarily give you, like Death Wish is a movie that never shows him get revenge on the actual people that committed the act. Now the sequel's not so much, because they've kind of just explored that like more entertainment catharsis for the audience, instead of that kind of like thought-provoking idea of the movie itself. It has like these social messages and shit like that, and this one has that. And I was impressed by it. I didn't expect just that, And I think that stuff like House on the Edge of the Park plays with that too, that social politics and things like that. Much smarter than a lot of the other ones. And I think this movie is really great. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I thought the acting was great. I thought the revenge was done in a way that made you feel like Like, this is fucked up. And it's not like overly gratuitous in the sense of something like, you know, like I Spit on Your Grave, you kind of cheer when she gets her revenge. You're happy. And man, you're so glad they get killed. But this one, you start to like almost be like, ugh. The thing is, it's about society. It's about the rich manipulating the poor and turning the poor on you. You know what I mean? Like that, all that idea, right? That they're manipulating you. He mentions people being sent to war, and the people are fighting up top, but they're not fighting themselves. They're sending pawns. They're sending the poor, and that's all what this movie is kind of about in a rape revenge kind of movie, right? So as far as the special features, I said there's an audio commentary by Aldo, audio commentary by art editor and Bruce Holchek, very good one as well. They talk about, of course, the releases of the film, how it really wasn't released in VHS here, except one VHS release and all that kind of stuff like that. Talk about the actors and the director and stuff like that. Interesting, good commentary. Disc 2 has the 2 commentaries, but it also has the special features. Interview with director Aldo Lado, 121, 81 minutes of that. Veiled Lady, interview with Macha Merli, which is 21 minutes from my memory. Back on the Train, interview with actor Gianfranco De Grassi, who plays Curly, one of the rapists in the film. Fairly interesting interview, very short. He kind of just talks like, I always found these uninteresting, so he talks about the interactions that the actresses and him had. Train in Vain, interview with actress Irene Miracle, who is an American, speaks English in the interview. And she was living in like Africa at the time, and talks about a little bit of history, how she got into this film and everything like that. Good performance, interesting story as well. Talks about when she was there for filming the rape scenes, obviously not very comfortable stuff. And Night Train Murders and Sardine Women, Power per Pleasure and the Subversion of Morality, video essay by Kat Ellinger, author of Daughters of Darkness. That is 10 minutes. She kind of breaks down, all this kind of stuff with the Borghese, the rich people and stuff like that. Interesting. And yeah, there is definitely that element, right? That suppressed element from her and the Veiled Woman. She's an MVP of this movie. She's fantastic and scary and just a character that is an interesting one and a real one, is if you ask me. And then the third disc, of course, is the soundtrack CD, which is a great soundtrack. Beautiful score, dark movie, great movie, disturbing, but not because it's trying too hard to be disturbing, just because it's got finesse and it does it well, and it is fucked up and it shows stuff that I didn't expect, but it's just the build up to it that makes the payoff so shocking. But that is Night Train Murders. Great stuff. 1975, Severn Films. Next up is Flesh Freaks, and this is a double feature, so of course, Kill Them and Eat Them. And Flesh Freaks, let's start with that one, 2000. This guy, Canadian director. Let me think of his name here. No, that's terrible. You don't even know his name. It is kind of a hard to pronounce name. Conall Pendergast. So see the first name Conall. But Flesh Freaks 2000, made in high school. This guy made this movie in high school. He was 17 years old when he started it, and he was going back and forth between Belize and I think Canada and everything like that. So there's footage from Belize right away. It's SOV, and I was like, oh, that's weird. And it gives a vibe in the very beginning. It's just like, one of these Italian cannibal jungle adventure zombie movies where we're seeing like footage of animals and shit. And I was like, this feels a lot like that, but except on a low budget, and all that kind of stuff like that. So this acting is not great. These are not professional actors. The editing is sometimes has kind of flares of coolness and editing too as well, especially when you realize it was a 17-year-old kid who started this project. The special effects are clunky and cheap, but sometimes fun. The plot of the movie is kind of fun. The acting and the dialogue is the worst about it, I would say. And the pacing is not really that great. So what we have here is a guy returning, and something really fucked up happened in the jungle. Of course, he got out there on an archaeological scholarship and whatnot, and he came back. He doesn't want to talk about it, but his friend pushes him for half the fucking movie. Tell me. Of course, he eventually tells him. We learn that they unearthed the body, and the body went crazy and killed everyone. And now he's kind of back at his college campus, and something goes wrong. Somebody starts to get killed, and pretty long there's this nasty, gnarly zombie walking around. Other people start to get infected, and then we kind of add this element of a sci-fi element, which I thought was really cool how they did it. And we just have kind of some gore, some running around, characters kind of switch who you expect. Overall, Flesh Freaks is okay. I didn't love it. I appreciated its ambition. I appreciated the kind of some flourishes of editing and its kind of locations and stuff like that. And some of the cinematography wasn't bad for an SOV movie. Overall, the characters are not great, but you say it's a 17-year-old kid. I'm like, this is actually much more impressive for a 17-year-old kid to make this, and it kind of pushed it a little bit higher up for me, to be honest. As far as the special features on here, it actually caused me to add more appreciation to the movie. And I think this was originally a Golden Ninja Blu-ray that was out, and I think I have that Blu-ray as well. But this is Saturn's Core, I should mention, kind of reissue. But there's an audio commentary with Conall Pendergast, and it's moderated by Justin Declau of Golden Ninja Video, and I love that commentary. I love the interview that he has with him as well. There's a little interview on here and whatnot. And that guy is so full of energy. He's making a lot of jokes, and they're talking a lot about the movie and stuff. And it's just a really good commentary, really sweet commentary. And it makes me kind of appreciate it a little bit more. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of the movie. I cut my teeth on a lot of SOV growing up and low-budget movies. I reviewed tons and tons of them. Sometimes a lot of them hold up. Sometimes they don't. Flesh Freaks was one that I didn't see at the time. I guess maybe I was looking for something more in line with Meat Market, which I remember being a gory, nasty little thing. He also did, the guy directed a Binge and Purge, but this is more, although it's gory and bloody, it's more like sweet. It's got a little endearing kind of like childlike quality about it, but that is Flesh Freaks. The cover art would suggest that it's way nastier than it is. Yeah, I'm just not going to separate these two, but we're going to dive right into Kill Them and Eat Them, which is a bonus feature on here. It's made in 2002, 2003, same director, and it's less of a zombie film, of course. It's more of a monster film, mad scientist kind of deal. It feels like it takes place in some sort of post-apocalyptic world and everything like that. And there's these kind of mutations going around, and a couple people end up walking through this kind of like shitty industrial broke down place, and they get attacked by these mutations, and they end up with like this doctor who's like performing these weird surgeries on them and saying, I'm trying to help you, but he's really fucking them up with the mutation, and it gets wild, and people start mutating, and when they're mutating, it sounds like something Brian Pollin would make, like Blood Pigs or Bone Sickness or something like that, Cryptic Plasm, but it's not quite on the level of his, intricate details or time that he puts into his movies, but what happens is we kind of have these monstrous deformities and creatures, and they're just giant masks. There's a lot of masks in Flesh Freaks as well. There's these giant masks, and when they do the zoom ins, the teeth are moving, and everybody's voice sounds like the Toxic Avenger. It's like, give me that syrup, and they're just these giant monsters. It is comical, but I'm pretty sure it's comical on purpose. It's definitely supposed to be a little silly. It wears out its welcome for me. I don't hate it, but I just cannot stay for 80 minutes and be invested. It's ambitious. It has a lot of characters or monster characters. Overall, it's kind of fun if you kind of shut your brain off. I didn't love Kill Them and Eat Them either, but I do appreciate these these kind of young people making these movies. It brings me back myself, of course, but there's a bunch of bonus features on here as well, a bunch of his short films, pretty much his entire filmography, honestly. Flicker, Satan's Psycho Girl, Guts of the Gods, Legend of the Seven Bloody Torturers, Cyclops Diet, Self-Actualization of the Werewolf Woman, and The Noonday Demon. And I do think that at first film he didn't want to do any comedy, but I think that Kill Them and Eat Them has a little bit more. Saturn's Core, nice release here. The movie is SOV. It does not look great. It does have subtitles and stuff like that. The soundtrack on Flesh Freaks is a little annoying, a little cheap, very loud, and very repetitive. But hey, it is what it is. There's a lot worse SOV movies, but there is a lot better as well. So, all right, we're going to hop into those 1982 movies.
I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to. But it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstone! You only moved the headstone! Why? Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you who loves and will survive. I've been waiting for someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah, waiting for a girl like you to come into my life.
You bitch! You called me a bitch!
What's in the basket?
How do we know she is alive?
Say, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to... Please, stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop
All right, first up is Still of the Night, starring Roy Scheider and Meryl Streep. It also has one of the cops from Natural Born Killers. I remember him kind of being the dumb cop that they kidnap at the end. He's in here as a police detective. I know he has a name. I know he's a character actor. I know he's done other movies. I don't know it. I'm sorry. The director actually did Kramer vs. Kramer, and he did a really cool kind of western from the 70s called Bad Company with Jeff Bridges. That's a great movie. And he wrote Bonnie and Clyde. So the guy's got a nice track record. Roy Scheider, great actor, of course. Jaws and Sorcerer and Blue Thunder. Meryl Streep, Deer Hunter, needs no introduction, a million movies as well. So this is kind of lumped in as a horror film. Kino had a Blu-ray. It's long out of print, so that's unfortunate. But it's more of a thriller. It's definitely in the thriller vein, I would say. They put it as a horror movie on Letterboxd. This is 95%, 75% thriller, 25% horror maybe. But Roy Scheider is a psychiatrist. There's always psychiatrist, therapist. I can never remember when I watch these movies. So basically what happens is he has a patient who is murdered. In the very beginning, there's a nice little scene by Randy Jurgensen, the ex-cop who's in a bunch of William Lustig movies and Freakin' movies and stuff, always in these movies. And he's kind of like a criminal looking to rob a bunch of cars, and his body falls out. It turns out it's this patient of Roy Scheider. And we kind of jump back in. It's not really told in order sometimes, where he'll like have these, we'll see flashes of the guys like kind of like kind of therapist sessions, and the sessions are like we see like this dreamlike quality when he's walking up these stairs and all these things like that. And Meryl Streep was having an affair with this guy, so she gets interested in Roy Scheider bringing stuff back and doesn't want this guy to know about the wife. She doesn't want the wife to know, so it gets complicated. The detective's constantly following him around, and eventually somebody starts stalking Roy Scheider, trying to kill him and whatnot, and you're like, oh no, is this going to be a Meryl Streep kind of subject and anything? Overall, it's a decent thriller. It's kind of boring. It doesn't really catch my attention very much. It's kind of just meanders through its entire plot until it gets to the very end, and there's a kind of a wacky reveal that you're like, would I buy that? I don't fucking know. People are crazy, and they most certainly are. But it's a well shot, well made, well acted movie. It just, I feel like you got fucking Roy Scheider and Meryl Streep. And it's not like their performances are next level and shit. And I know I've seen them always do next level stuff. So this is kind of a waste of talent in terms of acting as concerned. And, I was thinking it might be along the lines of something like the John Huston movie, Phobia, from 1980 or something like that, where it's like, we're going to take a big director, a classy director, and take a stab at a horror film. And it's even less horror than that. It's just definitely, you're kind of like, I'd watch this late at night on HBO, but it doesn't really have the sexual explicit stuff that you'd expect. It's like one of those without the sexual explicit stuff with 2 A-list actors. So, I don't know. I wouldn't give Still of the Night a recommend. It's just kind of a bland thriller to me. But, hey, it does have some really surreal kind of scenes that I did enjoy, but besides that, I'm going to say no. Okay, next up, we're kind of getting these compilation tapes that were made for the video store, produced by Charlie Band, of all people. Yes. And the first one up is The Best of Sex and Violence. This is narrated by John Carradine. That is the highlight of the movie. So essentially, we have an opening that's made for the movie. It's a guy with a knife chasing a topless girl, and you're like, yep. These are the kind of things that make people think horror movies are trash. And some of them are trash, and some of them are fun trash, and we have fun with them, but not all of them are trash. But this is the thing, they'd be like this. If horror movies aren't shitty movies that hate women, explain this. And you'd be like, thing is. And then run off like Bugs Bunny or something. But, The Best of Sex and Violence is one of these compilation tapes put in the video stores at the time. Full Moon, like Wizard, or whatever the hell Charlie Band's company was at the time, was doing these. There's like Film Gore, there's Famous TNA, there's Best of Sex and Violence. And, they're kind of like shitty versions of Terror on Tape or Terror on Tour. Not Terror on Tour is the one. It's Terror on Tape and Terror in the Aisles. I'm sorry, Terror on Tour is a 1980 slasher by Don Emmons, which is not very good. But we're looking at, I'm sitting there calling this a shitty version of Terror on Tape, which is Cameron Mitchell in it. But I think that one's better. Hell, Terror in the Aisles is much better with Nancy Allen and Donald Pleasance. But this is like the shitty version of that. John Carradine is in here narrating, and he says really inappropriate stuff, and that's worth the price of admission. He'll just be like stuff that's so dated, it's so bad, like, gay jokes and womanizing jokes and shit. But, he didn't write it, but it's John Carradine, and he's just working for a paycheck, and he has cameos by Keith and Keith and David Carradine in here as well. No Robert. But, it just clips of stuff like Truck Stop Women, some zombies, some stuff like that, and it cuts back to him being like, oh, he'd just say something. I can't even think of some of the lines he says, but I'm just like, oh shit. He'd be like, I wish this director was never born. It's shit like that. It's not good. It's not very good. It's pretty terrible, but it made me laugh because John Carradine's talking in it, and it is what it is, I can't think of all the titles in here. I wrote a couple of them down to remember. This is kind of a cheat sheet, but Sweet Sugar, a lot of Philippines movies, blaxploitation movies, wizard movies, the kind of stuff you'd expect. But Best of Sex and Violence, and also this DVD's crummy as shit. Like, it's just taken off like a rip or something. It's not even a VHS rip, so I wouldn't. It's like, it is what it is. These Grindhouse DVDs were not very good, but they're very cheap, so it is what it is. Next up, listed as a horror movie. I don't know why, but it's from 82. It's another compilation, Famous TNA. I didn't even open this one. I just watched it because I realized that this one's going to have the same bad quality that Best of Sex and Violence has. But this one also has, I think it had the introduction, Charles Band's Grindhouse intro, which this one had as well, which was kind of him explaining what the fuck these are. Famous TNA, the only difference is it has Sybil Danning doing the opening and narration, and Sybil Danning at one point in this, I watch her eyes move as she's reading cue cards. She's like, this next movie here, and you hear somebody walking in the background, and you're just like, they do not give a flying fuck at all. They did not give a shit. This guy probably had one day to film this, maybe a couple hours, that's it. Sybil Danning barely gives a shit. The people in the background of the set barely give a shit. It has half the same movies from Best of Sex and Violence. It has outtakes from other movies. Talks about, a lot of female actors and all that kind of stuff like that. Naked and things like that. And it just shows nudity from different movies. This is pretty bad. This is pretty bottom of the barrel stuff. It's just not good. It has some Ennio Morricone score that it ripped off. It has another hit song that I was surprised was in there that I'm surprised they got away with. But overall, Famous TNA. It's not great, but it does have Cassandra Peterson dancing when some of her go-go dance. This is the kind of stuff that was made before, the Playboy Channel, before the internet. So guys would get away with renting this stuff, and it's not porn. Hey, I got away with it. It's not as bad. It's not a bright red tape. I didn't have to walk in the back room to get it. But this is essentially what this is. This is just for sad people to jerk off to in the mid '80s. It is interesting to watch. As kind of a timepiece, or just know it exists and maybe skip skim through it. I don't think sitting down and watching the whole thing, unless you're looking for a couple, titles that you missed out at the time or see how they were advertised. That's probably the only interest in it, to be honest. But that's famous TNA. Yeah, not good at all. Okay, the last one from 1982 this week is Nero and Poppea, an Orgy of Power, directed by Bruno Mattei. That's right. Basically, last year, 81. I always say last year like I'm acting like I'm in 82 with this. But last year, Bruno Mattei did a movie called Caligula and Messalina, with Severin Films put out. Kind of a ripoff, of course, of Caligula from 79, the Tinto Brass movie. 82, we also had Caligula, the Untold Story by Joe D'Amato. So I've been watching these kind of crummy Caligula ripoffs through the 80s. And this one here, I actually enjoyed a little bit more than the other two. Because when I want to watch something like this, I want more ridiculous shit. The star in this is actually in, I think, Caligula and Messalina as well. A bunch of the cast is. Actress Francoise Blanchard is in here from Living Dead Girl, and stuff like that. So that's cool. She's also in Caligula and Messalina. So a couple familiar faces. This one, the lead by Nero, is great in here. He's completely unhinged. So basically, his father-in-law is in charge. Not his father-in-law, but his stepfather, I guess, and his mother married him and whatever. So the mother poisons the father to put Nero in charge so she can pull the strings. Nero immediately gets into power and goes completely crazy, an orgy with power. He does all these insane shit things like beat the son, his stepbrother, and all these kind of makes fun of him like he was made fun of. Starts raping and killing. He takes a young man as his bride and castrates him so he can technically be a woman, and rapes him in front of everyone, and then makes somebody rape him. It's just a crazy ass movie, and I was like, this is so sleazy and dirty and trashy that I somehow enjoyed it a little bit more than Caligula and Messalina and Caligula the Untold Story. Am I right? Probably not. Am I wrong? Yes, I'm sure I'm wrong. I'm sure I just have completely fried my fucking brain where I'm sitting here watching these Caligula ripoffs like, this one's pretty good. This one's better than the other ones, It has a small person in it, and he's laughing at the other people. And there's a lot of reused footage, I believe, from the other Caligula ripoffs. So I'm like, boy, oh boy, it is a weird, weird world. There is a German Blu-ray of this with multiple cuts on it, from my understanding. Maybe Severin will put it out. I would buy it because I am I just love crap and I love weird shit. And I enjoyed this one. The guy who plays Nero has had a weird history of film. If you look into it, he's done kind of porno film things, and maybe he has a gay interest. I don't really know. I think he probably does. He's nude in this film, walking around with his junk hanging out. A lot of it. This is just a sleazy, nasty, raunchy ass movie that I find some enjoyment in because I am a sleazy, nasty, raunchy person, I guess, when it comes to my entertainment. But Nero and Poppea, I think that's how you say it. Words with me. It's not very good, but yeah. There was a VHS stateside, I believe, at one point, but this is a sleazy movie. Recommended for people that really like these kind of Caligula-style movies. But hey. Okay, next up is the Patreon pick, and we're doing Rat Scratch Fever by Jeff Leroy, 2010-2011. Now, this was put out by Shriek Show. This is one of the fresh meat lines that they used to have. Now, Jeff Leroy is an independent director. Pretty ambitious guy. Does a lot of ambitious things for his movies and things like that. Stop motion, I guess, forced perspective, digital effects and stuff. And this movie is really ambitious, really low budget. The scenes show everywhere, but there's kind of some charm to that. So basically we have a group of, I guess, space marines, space scientists on this planet. I almost said island like an idiot. But this planet, and these giant rats start to attack them. They're obviously rats made to look big, like normal rats, and then they have the red eyes, CGI red eyes or whatever, and they're attacking and ripping people apart, mixed with practical. Pretty cool. One of the people ends up getting to escape pod and launches back to Earth. We kind of go to the space station where it's ran by this guy named Dr. Steele, and he looks all fucking mangled. Best character in the movie, pretty cool character. And he says, we need to blow this ship up. We don't know what she's carrying on here. They try to. She ends up getting out and escaping, but it turns out she's carrying some sort of parasitic rat creature in her head, and it's going to cause the doom of Earth if she's not stopped. Her boyfriend is ex-military, super badass guy, and he kind of tries to find her and gets involved in everything like that. And when he does find her, he ends up taking her and helping her, but what he doesn't know is she's spreading this crazy rat sickness. She's spreading rat scratch fever. Great title, by the way. And soon it is the end of the fucking world, and there's a giant apocalypse with rats running around ripping people to pieces. That's the plot of Rat Scratch Fever. That's pretty much the rundown. Some of the effects are really fun. Some of the acting is really crummy. Some is okay. I could have swore I saw Jeff Burr in this movie. Tell me if that's Jeff Burr or not. Is that Jeff Burr? I don't know. I didn't look it up. I completely forgot. But there's this one guy that I think is Jeff Burr in like one of these tanks, and he's funny, and he's the best actor in the movie besides Dr. Steele. But the way they do on a budget is fun. I'm pretty sure there's got to be a mixture of miniatures and digital effects and everything like that. But he doesn't let his ideas be stopped by budget, and it shows. Overall, I enjoyed Rat Scratch Fever. And the practical effects are fun. There's a really funny thing in this movie where, of course, there's a baby killed. And I'm spoiling something, but I have to. So we got this guy who basically let the entire world end because his girlfriend, who told him to kill her, he let her live, even though he knew something was wrong and knew she was spreading sickness or had an idea of it. So this guy let the whole world end because he didn't want to give up his girlfriend. But at one point, this woman's that he doesn't know, his baby dies. She says, "My baby's dead." And he's like, "Stop, forget her. She's dead." And I'm just like, you are the biggest hypocritical piece of dog shit in the world. You ended the planet just because you wanted to save your girlfriend. This lady just lost her baby, and it's not even her fault why this happened, and you're telling her to get over it, the baby's dead. I was just like, the idea of hypocrisy has never been so ridiculous in that moment. But I get it, but it's just a fun, low-budget B-movie romp with a lot of blood, a lot of ridiculous effects, some fun, some bad. But the ambition, the endearing quality about it, and the like genuine like attempt at making something cool is there, and that goes a long way. As far as the special features, trailers, outtakes, Hollywood premiere, alternate opening, ending, I did like the news footage too. The guy keeps coming on. He's like, the expressway, the E-way, all these areas are torn to pieces. And if we did have a giant parasitic rats, if rats were like 8 foot long, we'd be fucked. We'd be definitely dead pretty freaking quick. But Rat Scratch Fever, check it out. Sounds like it's up your alley. All right, let's get into these questions, comments, and concerns. Ken Coakley, I have Devil Times 5 on Blu-ray from Code Red. The cast is really amazing. Like Cool Hand Luke, Devil Times 5 had quite a few actors from Walking Tall films. In Cool Hand Luke, Morgan Woodward from Walking Tall, the final chapter, played the man with no eyes. Luke Askew from Walking Tall Part 2 played the prison guard, and Joe Don Baker from original Walking Tall played one of the inmates. In Devil Times 5, Gene Evans, who played Papa Doc, played the sadistic sheriff in Walking Tall. Tyler Latcher, who played Rick, also appeared in Walking Tall, the final chapter, as ACLU lawyer. Leif Garrett and Dawn Lynn, real-life brother and sister, were in all 3 Walking Tall films as Buford's kids. When Leif Barrett took off the wig, he looked like the same way he did in Macon County Line. You mentioned in your Marco Polo review that you're unfamiliar with who he was except for the game. Then I remembered that when I watched Incubus, William Shatner's character's sister called out to him repeatedly, yelling Marco. I yelled back Polo, right? I mean, like, it overshadows everything. I also watched Slap the Monster on Page 1, starring unrecognizable Gian Maria Volante. The cinematography reminded me of the Robert Foster film Medium Cool. Politics in Italy was really rough during the 70s and 80s. During the 80s, there was U.S. backed group of soldiers called the Red Brigade. When Reagan was recovering from the assassination attempt, Secretary of Defense Alexander Haig was discovered to be a higher up in the Red Brigade. Their main reason for existing was to shoot communists. The president was supposed to deny their existence like the Delta Force. I'm waiting to finally watch the new Nosferatu. It's supposed to be on Peacock, but it's not. But it's on Prime and Fango at home first. I did, however, watch the 3-part Dracula miniseries on Netflix. It's very good. Dark Gothic miniseries. I also forgot to mention the update with the Italian films from Severin. Hell of the Living Dead is my favorite Bruno Mattei film. Mine too. The film didn't quite come to American cinemas until '83 under the much better title Night of the Zombies. I saw an ad for it in one of our local newspapers, and the poster art looked like the film might be Night of the Living Dead story, with those zombies walking around a farmhouse or a cabin. Yeah, I know there's so many movies that did never get a wide release or a release until way later. Martine VP, thumbs up, thank you. Charlie Jick, thank you for the reviews. It's kind of funny, but Piranha 2 used to really scare me when I was a kid. I will definitely check out Mask of Satan and Leave Her to Heaven. By the way, I'm interested in the VHS tape you have called Demon Stone. Does that star Jan Michael Vincent? See, I did this last time. I tried to find where the frickin' Salem's Lot was. Here's Salem's Lot. I was supposed to answer this last time, and the runtime on it is 112 minutes, Ken Coakley. Now, if somebody can point out where the hell Demon Stone is. Oh, boy. I don't remember where Demon Stone is. I'm not going to remember because they are in alphabetical order at first, and then I took some out of storage years and years and years ago, so I have no idea. I do think that has Jan Michael Vincent in it, and I don't think I've ever watched it, to be honest, and I probably had it for 25 years. But But yeah, do you think it's still? I don't know. I don't know if it's worth checking out. This comment smells of death. I know some people are not happy about Shao getting the rights to the Golden Princess back catalog, but given the deal involved them getting the rights to the entire world, excluding Asia, I'd imagine that they'll end up sublicensing out to other labels around the world. So there's bound to be other options apart from Shao eventually. A bigger concern is how they'll end up charging for all this stuff. As the guy who wrote about the cost of the upcoming Reanimator Blu-ray mentioned, many of the boutique labels seem to be testing the water around how much people are willing to pay. Shout had to buy the entire Golden Princess catalog, a little over 150 titles. I think a lot of the films aren't going to be much commercial value. I suspect they'll end up charging a premium for the likes of John Woo, Troy Hark, Chinese Ghost Story, and other popular titles to try to make their money back. Anyway, worrying about the cost of Blu-rays that haven't been announced yet, first world fucking problems, eh? Yeah, great show as always, Dave. Thank you. Yeah, my concern is this, is that they start taking some of the back catalog titles that I want to see, like the crazy horror movies or weird stuff that a lot of people haven't seen, and they put them in Shout exclusives. And they're bare-bone disc, bare-bone remasters, and they're $35 without shipping. That's going to piss me off. I wish that they would just, I wish Kino would have got it and just fucking put all that back catalog stuff as like, yeah, $15, $20 titles. I'll pay that, but I'm not paying $35 for a bare bones fucking disc because they don't want to print. I get why they're doing it, but it just sucks. And it's first world problems, like you said. And then we have Royce Bunn, super long time watcher, follower, finally deciding to join the Perks Club. Love your vids so much. Thank you. And also, I have to give everybody a shout out. I'm going to do that. Just do every patron a shout out because I haven't done it in so long. Maybe next week. Nick Moore from Belgium. Lamberto Bava's Mask of Satan looks most interesting indeed. A tribute to his father's classic and not just a lazy copy. I want to check it out, even if it's considered a product of Nepo Baby, if one could still be considered a baby aged 80. Questions. What's your favorite Mario Bava feature and what's your favorite Lamberto Bava? Well, favorite Mario Bava film has got to be Blood Black Lace. I think so. And my favorite Lamberto Bava has got to be Demons. Do you consider Devil Times 5 as good as The Bad Seed, or is Devil a better film? I mean, The Bad Seed's a better film. Come on, it's The Bad Seed. Would Robert Eggers be a good pick to remake any George Romero movies? Dead films? No. He's a fucking horrible pick to redo George Romero's films. It's just nothing alike. They're not that Robert Eggers sucks. He's a great filmmaker. He's just not the guy for Romero at all. It's just... it seems like he's more interested in period pieces. Romero's films are always contemporary. Romero's films always reflected the time they took place in, and then still seem to be ageless. Robert Eggers' films are I don't know if The Witch seems ageless. It does seems to have points, but Lighthouse and The Witch and stuff like that. Like Lighthouse is like a retold like Greek story. It's just I cannot see any George Romero and Robert Eggers comparison. I think he's a bad choice. I think he's the worst choice, actually, in terms of new directors. Jordan Peele would even be a better choice. And I would say Jordan Peele is too much different style comedy in his movies than Romero had. Boy, that's a tough one. It'd have to be somebody like Greg Nicotero with maybe like some helping writers, other writers putting in some work as well. Just somebody that has from the Romero world, that knows Romero, that worked with Romero a lot. I think it has to be that way, honestly. I just don't see it in a lot of directors. I really don't see a Romero world in any other buddy, but that's just because Romero's my favorite. Adam Watson, hey there, Parka, howdy. Tyler Tadeo, glad you liked Leave Her to Heaven, one of those movies I bought completely blind a few years ago, and is now one of my favorites. I try to watch it every year. The drowning scene had me absolutely floored the first time. Yeah, I was just like, he's going to be okay. No, he's not going to be okay. Fetish Magic, hello, hottie. R.I.P. David Lynch. Hello. Nizrik Messiah, thanks for the David Lynch tribute at the beginning. One of my only movie-related channels I subscribe to. That's one that actually made one. Great director. Thank you for watching. Mr. Gization, too many clothes, gorgeous man. Want to see them pits. Okay. I hope that's a joke, but whatever. Way Up Dude gives me the thumbs up, all that stuff there. Yeah, let's just get into the update. It's a very quick one. It is just the 4K of The Substance, has a Blu-ray and 4K in it. Love the movie. One of my favorites, if not my favorite of the year. Definitely had to have it. Yeah, great stuff. Highly recommended. We're out of here. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. And as always, have a good one.